I like the definition of AI that was made up by Marvin Minsky a long time ago, and that is AI is anything a computer can do that you didn't know a computer could do. In the early 1960s, that meant sorting algorithms, quicksort being one of the first results of AI labs at MIT and Stanford. By the 1980s, it meant expert systems, cognitive systems, and HNC systems, neural network systems, now called machine learning systems. In any case, in 1984, machines couldn't think, and machines still don't think. And the expectation created a lot of failed startup companies. I remember in particular a couple of companies run by a friend that had a great sticker they put on everything that said "No AI bullshit." It didn't really work, unfortunately. So by the late 80s, we had entered into the AI winter, and nobody cared anymore. Nobody wanted to talk about it anymore. Jeff said that we moved on to other things. I'm not really convinced. Most AI companies became expert system companies, cognitive system companies, object-oriented distributed systems companies. Well, in 1989, I helped to start a company called the Object Management Group. 11 companies got together. The idea was to do something with distributed objects, but they weren't really quite sure what. What they really meant was rule-based systems and on distributed hardware. In other words, AI, but they didn't use the term AI because it was no longer an acceptable term. So it is completely amazing to me, 35, 40 years later, to be saying, I'm looking forward to being at AI World. Said and I have set up some exceptional sessions, including one that I'll be hosting a fireside chat with senior executives from Toyota and from Dell AMC Technologies. In 1989, we started, as I said, the Object Management Group to focus on object-oriented systems. That's why the name came out as OMG, which didn't mean anything else at the time. And we very quickly entered into the market the first object-oriented middleware standard called CORBA, Common Object Request Broker Architecture. By the mid-90s, we were focusing on modeling languages for modeling systems, the first one being the Unified Modeling Language, which is an OMG standard since 1995. We now own standards in business modeling, the business process management notation, in complex systems modeling, SysML, the systems modeling language, and other languages for enterprise architecture and so forth. But I think most interesting were the following two trends for OMG in the late 90s and early 2000s. The first was a focus on vertical markets, and now 85 to 90% of all OMG standards are in vertical markets in healthcare, finance, telecommunications, in military communications, in military command and control, and retail systems, and so forth. About 30 different verticals, as I say. But in the early 2000s, we were approached by a group of companies that wanted to do something in service-oriented architecture. They wanted to share experiences. They didn't want to build standards. My initial reaction was that it didn't really hold any interest for us, but then I realized our core competence at OMG is not necessarily standards in general, standards in specific, but ecosystem development in general. That is, bringing together companies to figure out what it is they wanted to achieve together, whether that was standards or test beds or white papers or whatever, and then giving them an open, neutral, international, shared process that they could achieve what they wanted to achieve under antitrust cover. After all, there are a lot of competing companies working together. And it was really important that we find a way that we didn't get any extra attention from antitrust experts around the world, in the US and Europe and Japan or wherever. We've now been doing that for 29 years, since 2001, in about a dozen different non-standards related areas. And one of those is the Industrial Internet Consortium. Founded on March 27th, 2014, the Industrial Internet Consortium doesn't develop standards. Instead, what we do is we build test beds. The concept is very simple. We know that IoT, the Internet of Things, is going to have tremendous impact on not only manufacturing, but on healthcare systems, on agriculture, on energy systems, smart cities, smart buildings, and so forth. But nobody really knows exactly what talents are necessary, who to hire, what to train, what to retrain, and what standards will be necessary to make that technology easier to develop. The idea of the Industrial Internet Consortium is to build these test beds to learn those things. We now have almost 30 test beds, typically quite large, in smart cities, in smart buildings, in manufacturing and production, in healthcare systems, clinical care systems, in agriculture, and so forth, in which we are actually building through our partnerships with our members, test beds to learn all of these things and publishing the results of those test beds through white papers today and through what we call a resource hub. At hub.iiconsortium.org, this allows you to enter in information about what you're building using IoT and what you're looking for. What standards do you want to know about? What training do you need to understand? What RFPs should you be issuing to your vendors to get the right software, hardware, and consulting to provide the results that you need? One of our most successful test beds is a Dell-led test bed in smart buildings in Kawasaki with Toshiba, and I've asked Saeed on to talk specifically about that test bed, as he's the project manager and the original designer of that project. And like most IoT projects, it includes quite a lot of artificial intelligence and even some neural networking.